Hey everyone, it's Dr. Romani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel. So let's talk a little bit about trust, and namely how much your sense of trust gets so messed up by these relationships. So here's the thing. When you're in a narcissistic relationship, your relationship with trust changes forever. But it happens in two different ways, and that's what I want to break down in this video. So did you feel, or do you feel, like you will never trust anyone again after having gone through a narcissistic relationship? I'm guessing for most of you felt like, no, hell no, I'm never going to trust any of again. Now, I guess some of it relates to what happened in the relationship. You have to ask yourself, were you cheated on? Were you lied to? Did you get money taken? Were you grifted or scammed or future faked or repeatedly gaslighted or manipulated? The nature of the betrayals matters, but ultimately, not only are you betrayed, you're so psychologically turned upside down that everyone starts to seem like a con, a thief, or a liar by the time you're out of that narcissistic relationship, whether they are or they're not. And this can also happen from childhood. If you had a narcissistic parent that repeatedly made broken promises or abandoned you, or always chose themselves, or chose someone else, it's the same thing. You just feel like you can't trust people. If you got ripped off or scammed by a business partner or a colleague, same thing. You just don't feel like you can trust anyone. And the mistrust that comes out of being in a narcissistic relationship is different than other kinds of mistrust because it goes so deep in these relationships. Not only are you betrayed when you're in a narcissistic relationship, but you're also told that the betrayal is somehow your fault. So you stop trusting pretty much most people in the basic ways. You go into a relationship, you believe people from that point on are going to lie to you or do a bait and switch or break promises. And then you also stop trusting the decency of all human beings. You start to believe at some level that people are harmful and threatening. You pull back from spending time with them. And that goes far deeper than just thinking that a new partner is going to cheat on you. So the lack of trust that comes out of a narcissistic relationship can generalize to all relationships. When people come out of narcissistic relationships, they will find that they cannot trust anyone. And I'm sure a lot of you had that experience. You don't trust the plumber, or you don't trust that your cousin who says you'll pick you up from the airport, or you don't trust that the package that you ordered will come in one piece. You just start losing trust in everything and everyone. And that is an incredibly exhausting way to live. But then there is the far more pernicious and awful loss of trust, a different kind of loss of trust. And this is to me is worse than not trusting other people. You stop trusting yourself. People who come out of narcissistic relationships, or people who are still in them, still wonder, was it me? Was there more that I could have done? Am I the one who's narcissistic? You might wonder if you're a decent human being, if you are all the things that the narcissistic people said that you are. Am I bad? Am I dumb? Am I lazy, incompetent, mean? You know the laundry list of things you say about yourself, and you believe them. You stop trusting your judgment, especially if you've been in more than one narcissistic relationship, or if you've been a situation that other people saw kind of clearly as being toxic. You may think, ugh, I have no decision-making ability. I don't know how to pick them. I saw the signs and I didn't leave, or I went back. I can't trust myself. You don't trust yourself after years of being told by someone or multiple someones that you're wrong about everything. You may find yourself doubting where you put the keys, or if you packed the sunscreen, or if you put the letter in the mailbox. And you may waste lots of time in a life going back and double checking everything or asking for reassurance because you don't trust yourself. You don't trust that you remember things properly or that you did them the right way. You replay the relationship, the narcissistic relationship, and hell, even not narcissistic relationship. And you'll replay them and say, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Was I weird? And it all ends up being a double-teamed trust mess because you stop trusting other people and you stop trusting yourself. So it makes it feel impossible that you'd be able to get into new relationships, collaborate, build partnerships, or even rely on people to do small things for you. You doubt your judgment. You hold back. And listen, I get it. After enduring the mess or even the horrors of a narcissistic relationship, it's very easy to stop trusting your capacity to make a good decision or honor the signs, and to start viewing, and then you start viewing everyone as a threat or a harm or a grifter or someone who's on the make. It's easier to not trust than to take the risk of having to go through all of that again. But you are also wise enough to know that that's not a life to live like that, and that in order to have people in your life, you're going to have to make some leaps of faith. So what do you do when you're caught in this trust mess? Number one, as you figure out what narcissism is and go into new relationships, take your time. You remember my 12-month reminder when you get out of a old relationship before you get into a new one. You need time to learn to trust others, but you got to start with yourself first. And that means taking some time with yourself, learning to trust yourself again. It means starting small, making small decisions and seeing how they turn out, and then leveling up. But it takes time, and the destruction of trust that happens in a narcissistic relationship can take a long time to rebuild. Give it the time. Don't feel like you need to rush back into relationships and prove that you can trust people again and trust big. Move slowly. Second, practice trust with people you already know and kind of trust. I hope that each of you has at least one person in your life who has not fundamentally betrayed your trust. Practice experiencing trust with that person, enlisting them to help you and seeing that they do. Trusting your judgment about having this person in your life as well. Even this won't be easy, but start small here, just like you did with yourself. Third, don't overgeneralize, as hard as it is to do that or not do that. It's easy to overgeneralize from one instance back into all this idea that all people are bad and threatening after your narcissistic relationship. And even after your narcissistic relationship, people will break your trust again, and you will make some bad choices. That's life. But one mistrustful thing that might happen with a person who's only done that once, or one breach of trust, doesn't mean that's how it always is everywhere. Learn from those things, take a look at what happened, and integrate that information. Maybe you won't trust that person again who breached your trust once. But don't leap right into this idea that this is everybody. Number 4, learn from these breaches of trust that continue to happen. Like I said, you're never going to live in a world where everyone's going to do right by you. So let's say, for example, you relied on someone to do something and they didn't do it. Break it down. Where did it happen? Catch yourself if you blame yourself. But give a long, critical look at what went wrong. Figure out what can be fixed and how you go back into trusting that person, if you do. Number 5, though, is recognize that your relationship with trust may have changed in a permanent way. It may be that you now trust differently. Maybe you just do hold a little more suspiciousness. Maybe you want to do some things on your own and aren't in such a big rush to collaborate, and you're more careful. And you know what? I'm not sure that that's always a bad thing for survivors. You may meet someone new if you're dating and move very tentatively. And if they complain or are concerned that you're too tentative, you can be honest with them that trust takes a minute for you. And if they push it or push back, heed that as the red flag that it is and step back. I can say personally, as a survivor of narcissistic relationships, trust is a real problem for me. I don't trust. And it probably means my career has been held back a little. I don't trust collaborators as a rule, that relationships are very difficult for me, and I have a very, very, very tight circle of friends, and I don't go out of it. I'm also overly suspicious of new opportunities, and I never answer a phone number I don't recognize. I know it's self-protective. There's been so much hurt, so many breaches of trust, and so much disappointment I've had. And in some ways, realistic expectations that we need to navigate a narcissistic world can translate into not trusting every bright new thing that comes your way. At some level, I have to accept that as who I am or who I've become, I guess, and what has happened to me. And instead of fighting it and trying to say, no, 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 I'm going to be wide and open and accepting and trusting of everyone, in essence, going against my nature, I have learned, as many of my clients have learned, is that trust is a door that's ajar. It's not closed, shut, and locked, but it's also not cast wide open. Perhaps that trust door is open just enough so that you can peer out, check out the situation, feel the weather, get the facts, do your due diligence, be discerning, and then and only then you may crack the door open a little more each day. Will it ever be completely wide open? Probably not. But I'm confident that by being patient with yourself and taking the time you need, you can let in enough light through that door to slowly step into new situations and people, but tentatively and carefully, almost like a cat that's walking on an unfamiliar surface. Listen, my point of view is that if you survive the breach of trust, or breaches, many breaches of trust that have happened in your past narcissistic relationships, you've definitely learned one thing for sure. That even if it happens again, it would suck to have your trust betrayed by someone new again. It'll sting. It'll feel like breaking a leg in the same place twice. But you also learned that you did have what it took, that somehow you got to the other side. And yeah, maybe you'll open the door a little less next time, but resilience means that we do crack open that door. And even if it happens again and someone breaches your trust, you know that you've got what it takes, painful as it is, to get to the other side. And speaking of trust, I trust that you'll be interested in checking out my new book. Comes out next February. Would love for you to get it. It's available for pre-order now. Click the link in the video description.